back, everyone, to HalloweenHaunts365.com, the podcast. I'm Jared. This is Terry.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi.
How you doing?
I'm okay.
Good. And today we're going to take a break from the haunted attraction industry and work towards one of our other subjects, haunted real life. And today's subject will be John Wayne Gacy, a notable serial killer from the Chicago area. Crazy story.
Yes, it is.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't imagine being the police and pulling up to that basement, but let's get into it. For news, not a lot going on. I know Field of Screams is open December 11th for their Christmas special.
Cool.
We might have to maybe make a trip for some Christmas lights. You know, you want to see Christmas lights, that's seeing Christmas lights.
I don't mind going there.
Nah, we'll see. We'll see how the schedule works with my job and everything, and we'll go from there. The award ceremony's done. I still have to send out those plaques. We have a couple interviews lined up. We're talking to Frankie soon, as soon as we can line it up.
Okay.
I'll see what he's doing tomorrow. But other than that, we're going to get into our true crime segment. Like we said earlier, John Wayne Gacy. One of the most notorious people that ever lived. And let's get in a little bit of his history. See if we missed any red flags. And really, we do this in honor of the victims. We don't want to, keep the love for serial killers like some oddballs have, but it's fascinating. So we wanted to dive into it since it did haunt us. It haunted the country. It still haunts that area. The house is for sale if you want to buy, the burial spot of over 32 bodies, but I'm out.
No, I can't imagine.
I'm going to pass. Well, let's get it started. Early life of John Wayne Gacy. John Wayne Gacy was born in Chicago, Illinois on March 17th, 1942. So, usually a St. Patty's Day, right?
Yes.
Yeah. He was the second child and only son of John Stanley Gacy, who was born in June 20th, 1900. And he died on Christmas in 1969. And his mom was Marion Elaine Robeson. She was 8 years younger than her husband. His father was an auto repair mechanist and a World War I veteran. And his mother was a homekeeper. So, sounds like a kind of our basic childhood.
Yes.
Gacy was of Polish and Danish ancestry, and his family was Catholic. Oh, there's a red flag. Just kidding. His paternal grandparents, who spelled the name as Gatsa or Gesa, had emigrated to the United States from Poland. At that time, it was part of the German state of Prussia. So, John Wayne Gacy was Polish. Why don't you take us into his childhood for a little bit?
So Gacy was close to his mother and two sisters, but endured a difficult relationship with his father. He was an alcoholic who was physical, abusive to his family. His father also belittled him, causing him dumb and stupid.
Red flag number 2.
And comparing him unfavorable with his sisters.
Oh, he was calling him a pussy.
One of Gacy's earliest memories was of his father beating him with a leather belt for accidentally disarranging components of a car engine he had assembled. His mother tried to shield her son from the father's abuse, which only resulted in accusations that he was a sissy and a mama's boy, who would probably grow up queer.
Yep, he was calling him a pussy.
Despite this mistreated, however, Gacy still loved his father, but felt he was never good enough in his father's eyes. That's really sad.
Well, that happens. I'll do both. In 1949, Gacy's father was informed his son and another boy had been caught sexually fondling a young girl. Oh, red flag number 3. His fathers whipped him with a razor a razor strap, which is basically a leather belt, as punishment. This year, the same year, a family friend and contractor would sometimes molest Gacy in his truck. Beautiful. This guy really had no chance. Gacy never told his father about this, afraid that his father would blame him, which is
And I'm
usually the
sure,
case with many of those molestations.
yeah, I'm sure
Sadly.
he would have too.
hmm
Turned it around on him.
Gacy was an overweight and unathletic child. Because of a heart condition, he was told to avoid all sports at school. During the fourth grade, Gacy began to experience blackouts. And if you follow the history of serial killers, one of the biggest thing is head injuries or blackouts, wetting the bed. There was another one I don't remember.
I was gonna say that. I've heard that.
There's three key factors that every serial killer has had, and that's one of them is blackouts. He was hospitalized on the occasion because of these episodes, and also in 1957 for a burst appendix.
Wow.
Gacy later estimated that between the ages of 14 and 18, he had spent almost a year in the hospital and attributed the decline of his grades to missing school. His father suspected these episodes were an effort to gain sympathy and attention and openly accused his son of faking the condition as Gacy lay in a hospital bed. What
That's
an asshole.
that's horrible.
Although his mother, sisters, and few close friends never doubted his illness, Gacy's medical condition was never conclusively
Exclusively.
diagnosed, which happens with a lot of people. I mean, we're talking the 50s.
There wasn't metal.
If you were mentally challenged, you were at a house in
Right.
a asylum. So we're missing all kinds of red flags here.
So maybe if it was this time and day, they could have probably caught a lot of it.
Yeah, but we still let a lot fly under the radar, as you see with all these fucking school shootings.
Yeah, that's true. One of Gacy's friends in high school recalled several instances when his father ridiculed or beat his son without probation.
Without reason.
On one occasion in 1957, he witnessed Gacy's father emergently drunk from the family basement to begin belittling him, hitting his son for no apparent reason. Gacy's mother attempted to intervene as her son simply put his hands to defend himself. According to the friend, Gacy never struck his father back during these altercations.
Wow. We'll get into a little bit of his midlife here, I guess. His start of his career. Gacy became big into the JCs and politics, and this will explain how all that happened. Like I said, John Wayne Gacy is an interesting case because you couldn't really see it on the outside. Like, you look at Dahmer, you know that guy's fucked up.
That is true.
Gacy and Bundy, and they really dig. In 1960, at age 18, Gacy became involved in politics, working as an assistant precinct captain for the Democratic candidate in his neighborhood. This led to more criticism from his father, who accused his son of being a patsy. Gacy later speculated his decision to become involved in politics was actually to seek the acceptance from others that he never received from his father. So he wanted other people to like him because his father couldn't fucking stand him.
That's ridiculous.
The same year Gacy's political involvement began, his father bought him a car.
Which is nice.
Well, he fucking earned it. He kept the vehicle's title in his own name until Gacy had finished paying for it. Oh, so he didn't buy him a car.
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
These monthly payments took several years for him to complete. His father would confiscate the keys to the vehicle if Gacy did not do as he said. So really, he was just more control over his son.
Yes.
Which is probably the biggest red flag, I'm saying. In 1962, Gacy purchased an extra set of keys after his father confiscated the original set. In response, his father removed the distributor cap, keeping the component for 3 days. Gacy recalled he felt totally sick and drained after that incident. You can't really go anywhere without the distributor cap.
No.
Jesus.
That's absolutely horrible. So, let's take us to hours after his father replaced the distributor cap. Gacy left home and drove to Las Vegas,
Oh,
Nevada.
that's a hike from the Chicago area.
That is. He found work within the ambulance service before he was transferred to work as an attendant at Palm Mortuary. As a mortuary attendant, Gacy slept on a cot behind the embalming room. Oh, that's. Oh,
You gotta do what you gotta do.
yeah, it's true. He worked there for 3 months, observing morticians embalming dead bodies. Gacy later confessed that one evening, while alone, he had climbed into the coffin of a deceased teenager male, embracing and caressing the body before experiencing a sense of shock that prompts Gacy to call his mother the next day and ask whether his father would allow him to return home. His father agreed, and the same day he drove back to Chicago.
So right there, you could tell he still knew it was wrong,
Right.
but he was having underlying things have him do shit.
Correct.
So it felt like right there to me seems like he wasn't in control. On returning home, Gacy enrolled at Northwestern Business College. Despite having failed to graduate from high school, he graduated in 1963 and took a management trainee position with the Nunn Bush Shoe Company. In 1964, the shoe company transferred him to Springfield, Illinois to work as a salesman and eventually promoted him to manager of the department. In March of the year, he became engaged to Marilyn Myers, a co-worker, which is actually surprising because it's a woman.
During their courtship, Gacy joined the local Jasons and worked
JC's.
sorry, and worked tirelessly for them. Begin named key man in April '64. The same year, he had his second homosexual experience. According to Gacy, after one of his colleagues in the Springfield Jaycees piled him with drinks and invited him to spend the evening on his sofa. He agreed. The colleague then performed oral sex on him while he was drunk. By '65, Gacy had risen to the position of vice president of Springfield Jaycees. The same year, he was named the third most outstanding Jaycee in the state of Illinois.
After a 6-month courtship, Gacy and Myers married in September 1964. Marilyn's father subsequently purchased 3 Kentucky Fried Chicken restaurants in Waterloo, Iowa. The couple moved there so Gacy could manage the restaurants with the understanding they would move into Marilyn's parents' former home, which had been vacated for the couple. The offer was lucrative. Gacy would receive $15,000 per year. That's about the equivalent of about $130,000 as of 2021, plus a share of the restaurant's profits.
Wow.
It's a good deal.
Yeah, that is a good deal. Following the obligation completion of the management course, Gacy relocated to Waterloo with his wife. He opened up a club in his basement where his employees could drink alcohol and play pool. Although Gacy employed teenagers of both sexes at his restaurant, he socialized only with the young men. Gacy gave many of them alcohol before he made sexual advances. If they rebuffed him, he would claim his advance were simply jokes or a test of morals.
Gacy's wife gave birth to a son in February of 1966 and a daughter in March of 1967. Gacy later described this period of his life as perfect. He had finally earned his father's approval. When Gacy's parents visited in July 1966, his father privately apologized for the physical and emotional abuse he had inflicted throughout his son's childhood and adolescence and said, "Son, I was wrong about you," as he shook Gacy's hand.
That was very nice of him.
Yep.
A little too late.
Well, damage probably already has been done.
In Waterloo, Gacy joined the local Gacy's chapter, regularly offering extended hours to the organization in addition to the 12 to 14 days he worked managing 3 KFC restaurants. At meetings, Gacy often provided fried chicken and insisted on being called Colonel. He and other Waterloo Gacy's were also deeply involved in wife swapping, prostitute, pornographic, and drug use.
Jesus Christ.
Right? Although Gacy was considered ambitious and something of a braggart, the other JCs helped him in high regard for his fundraising work, and in '67 named him Outstanding Vice President of Waterloo JCs. In the same year, Gacy served on the board of directors.
Wow. So, actually, this story does have a tie-in to haunted attractions, as the JCs were some of the organizations that first started haunted walkthroughs through people's houses to raise money for the JCs.
Oh.
That's actually kind of how this all started.
Oh, wow.
So, look, it's Halloween haunts even in true crime.
That's crazy.
In August 1967, Gacy sexually assaulted 15-year-old Donald Voorhees, the son of a fellow JC. Gacy lured Voorhees to his house upon the promise of showing him heterosexual stag films regularly played at JC events. Well, JC's isn't really that good. You got pornography, drug use,
Wife swapping.
There's a bunch of. I played for the JC's in Little League.
Did you?
Oh, Jesus Christ! Thank God I wasn't touched. Gacy piled Voorhees. I don't know. Gacy filled Voorhees with alcohol, allowed him to watch a stag movie, then persuaded him to engage in mutual oral sex, adding, "You have to have sex with a man before you start having sex with women."
Wow.
So he's fucking up this kid too. Over the following months, Gacy similarly abused several other youths, including one whom he encouraged to have sex with his own wife before blackmailing him into performing oral sex on him. Gacy tricked several teenagers into believing he was commissioned to conduct homosexual experiments in the interest of scientific research and paid them up to $50 each. And these fucking kids fell for this? God, different time.
Wow. That's insane. In March 1968, Voorhees reported to his father that Gacy had sexually assaulted him. Voorhees Sr. immediately informed the police, who arrested Gacy and charged him with performing an oral sodomy on Voorhees and attempted assault of a 16-year-old Edward Lynch. Edward Lynch, sorry. Gacy denied the charges and demanded to take a polygraph test. The results indicated Gacy was nervous when he denied any wrongdoing in relation to both young men.
Jesus.
That's
Hey, at least the dad went right away. I mean, they're in the same group together. They could have hit it. It was the 60s.
right.
So, that was good. Gacy publicly denied any wrongdoing and insisted the charges against him were politically motivated. Voorhees Sr. had opposed Gacy's nomination for appointment as president of the Iowa JCs. Several fellow JCs followed Gacy's story credible and rallied to his support. However, on May 10, 1968, Gacy was indicted on the sodomy charge.
Wow. On August 30th, 1968, Gacy pursued one of his employees, 18-year-old Russell Schroeder, to physically assault Voorhees in an effort to discourage the boy from testifying against him in court. Wow, that's all I could say. Gacy promised to pay Schroeder $300. Schroeder agreed, and in early September, lured Voorhees to an isolated county park, sprayed mace in his eyes, then beat him. Voorhees escaped and reported the assault to the police, identifying Schroeder as his attacker. They arrested him the following day while initially denying any involvement. Schroeder soon confessed to assaulting Voorhees, indicating he had done so at Gacy's request. Police then arrested Gacy and laid an additional charge of hiring Schroeder to assault and intimidate Voorhees against him.
Wow. He ratted. He ratted. I guess that's a Midwest thing. On September 12th, Gacy was ordered to undergo a psychiatric evaluation at the Psychiatric Hospital of the University of Iowa. 2 doctors examined him over a period of 17 days before concluding he had an antisocial personality disorder, the clinical term for sociopathy. Well, shocker. Was unlikely to benefit from any treatment or medical treatment, and that his behavior pattern was likely to bring him into repeated conflict with society. The doctors concluded he was mentally competent to stand trial. Good.
Well, on November 7th, 1968, Gacy pleaded guilty to 1 count of sodomy in relation to Voorhees, but not guilty to the charges related to the other use. Gacy claimed Voorhees had offered himself to him and that he had acted out of curiosity. His story was not believed. Gacy was convinced of sodomy on December 3rd and sentenced to 10 years imprisonment to be served at the
Anamosa State Penitentiary.
That same day, Gacy's wife petitioned for divorce, requesting she be awarded the couple's home and property, sole custody of their 2 children, and alimony. The court ruled in her favor, and the divorce was finalized on September 18, 1969.
Damn, she was not playing.
Gacy never saw his first wife or children ever again.
Smart woman. I mean, you see a lot of times where they'll just stay. That's my man. Well, this guy, he's diddling little kids, and she got out, which is good. So he was convicted of sodomy on December 3rd, and she was out as soon as she could be. During his incarceration in the Anamosa State Penitentiary, Gacy rapidly acquired a reputation as a model prisoner. Within months of his arrival, he had risen to the position of head cook. He also joined the Inmate JC chapter and increased its membership from 50 to 650 men in less than 18 months. He is known to have secured an increase in the inmates' daily pay in the prison mess hall and has supervised several projects to improve conditions for inmates in the prison. By the summer of '69, Gacy had overseen the installation of a miniature golf course in the prison rec yard.
Wow.
What? In 1969, Gacy was denied parole to prepare for a second scheduled parole hearing in May 1970. He completed 16 high school courses, for which he finally obtained his diploma in 1969.
On Christmas Day, 1969, Gacy's father died from cirrhosis of the liver.
He drank himself to death.
Wow. When told the news, Gacy collapsed to the floor, sobbing. His request for supervised compassionate leave to attend the funeral was denied.
Gacy was granted parole with 12 months probation on June 18th, 1970. So they let him out. Even after that medical
doctor said that he's not.
Yeah. So he got out after having served 18 months of his 10-year sentence. Oh, you could just do 18 months and 10 years. So, conditions of his probation included that Gacy relocated to Chicago to live with his mother, and that he must observe a 10 p.m. curfew. On his release, Gacy told friends and fellow JC, Clarence Lane, who picked him up from the prison and had remained steadfast in the belief of Gacy's innocence, that he would never go back to jail, and that he intended to reestablish himself in Waterloo. However, within 24 hours of his release, Gacy had relocated to Chicago. He arrived there on June 19th, and shortly thereafter, obtain a job as a short order cook in a restaurant.
On February 12, 1971, Gacy was charged with sexual assault, assaulting a teenager boy who claimed that he had lured him into the car at Chicago's Greyhound bus terminal and drove him to his home, where he had attempted to force the boy into sex. The court dismissed this complaint when the boy failed to appear. On June 22nd, Gacy was arrested and charged with aggravated sexual battery and reckless conduct. The arrest was in response to a complaint filed by a youth who claimed that Gacy had flashed a sheriff's badge, lured him into his car, and forced him to perform oral sex. These charges were dropped after the complainant attempted to blackmail.
Wow. The Iowa Board of Parole did not learn of these incidents, and 8 months later, in October 1971, Gacy's parole ended. So they even let him off parole. Like, this is a major fuck up by our government. Could be the cause of what caused close. They say 36. I'm
Could have
thinking
been
more deaths. Good job, guys. Way to fucking be. The following month, records of Gacy's previous criminal convictions were sealed. Why were they sealed? He's a grown-ass man. Why are they sealing records?
It's not like he's a minor.
Right. With financial assistance from his mother, Gacy bought a ranch house near the village of Norridge in Norwood Park Township, an unincorporated area of Cook County, itself a part of metropolitan Chicago. The address, and like I said, it's for sale, 8213 West Somerdale Avenue.
What's it going for?
It was a little higher than I expected. I don't remember the price. It's where he resided until his arrest in December 78, and where, according to Gacy, committed all his murders.
That's crazy.
So we let him out and sealed his file for this to happen.
I mean, did anybody ever say why they sealed the file?
Nope.
Okay, moving on. Gacy was an activist in his local community. He was active in his local community and helpful towards his neighbors. He willingly loaned his construction tools and plowed snow from neighborhood walks free of charge. Between 1974 and 1978, he hosted an annual summer parties, attended up to 400 people, including politicians.
Good Lord. If they only knew.
Wow.
So, like, he's doing a good job of hiding in plain
Yes.
sight. Here, I'll show you your yard. So, I mean, that's also the path of serial killers, is they like to hide in plain view. Like Bundy did, Gacy did. Well, the Night Stalker didn't. He didn't give a fuck.
No, he did not.
But, yeah, so he's hiding well. In August 1971, shortly after Gacy and his mother moved into the house, he became engaged to Carol Hoff, a divorcee with 2 young daughters whom he briefly dated in high school. They were married on July 1st, 1972. Carol and her daughters moved into Gacy's home after the couple announced their engagement. His mother moved out of the house shortly before the wedding. By 1975, Gacy had told his wife that he was bisexual. After the couple had sex on Mother's Day that year, he informed her this would be the last time that they would ever have sex. He began spending most evenings away from the home, only to return in the early hours of the morning with the excuse he had been working late, working his little boys late. Carol observed Gacy bringing teenage boys into his garage in the early hours and also found gay pornography and men's wallets and identification inside the house. When she finally confronted Gacy about whose items these belonged to, he informed her angrily that's none of her goddamn business. Okay, so you're finding random ass wallets in your house. What are you doing?
I'm asking you what that is. You tell me my own damn business. I'm beating your ass.
Well, you're also calling the fucking cops, probably, right?
Right.
Okay.
I don't understand these people. Following a heated argument, when she failed to balance a checkbook correctly in October of 75. Wait, she just stayed around?
Yes.
Carol asked Gacy for a divorce. He agreed to his wife's request, although by mutual consent, mutual consent, she continued to live at the West Somerdale house until February 76, when she and her daughters moved into their own apartment. 1 month later, on March 2nd, the Gacys divorced upon the false grounds of Gacy's infidelity of women was finalized. Wow.
Oh, so they used false grounds. She said he was cheating on her with women when they was teenage boys. So she's still covering up for him.
Right, she is.
Unbelievable. In 1971, Gacy established a part-time construction business, PDM Contractors. The initials PDM were for painting, decorating, and maintenance. With the approval of his probation officer, Gacy worked evenings on his construction contracts while working as a cook during the day. Initially, he undertook minor repair work such as sign writing, pouring concrete, and redecorating, but later expanded to include projects such as interior design, remodeling, installation, assembly, and landscaping. In the middle of 1973, Gacy finally quit his job as a cook so he could fully commit to his construction business. By 1975, PDM was expanding rapidly, and Gacy was working up to 16 hours a day. In March of 1977, he became a supervisor for PE Systems, a firm specializing in the remodeling of drugstores. Between PE Systems and PDM, Gacy worked up to 4 projects simultaneously and frequently traveled to other states. By 1978, PDM's annual revenue was over 200K. So he turned that into a good business.
He's smart. I mean,
Yeah.
he just has had some issues. Okay, so through his membership in local Moose Club, Gacy became aware of a Jolly Joker clown club, whose members regularly performed at fundraising events and parades, in addition to voluntarily and entertaining hospitalized children. In 1975, Gacy joined the Clown Club and created his own clown characters, Pogo the Clown and Patches the Clown, devising his own makeup and costumes. He described Pogo as a happy clown, whereas Patches was a more serious character. Gacy seldom earned money for his performances, and later that acting as a clown allowed him to regress in childhood. He performed as both Pogo and Patches at numerous local parties, politician functions, charitable events, and children's hospitals. Sometimes Gacy would remain in clowning costume after a performance and briefly drink at a local bar before returning home. Gacy volunteered public service as a clown throughout the years of his murders, led him being known as the Clown Killer.
Led him to being known as the Killer Clown, which John Wayne Gacy has been known for many years. The Killer Clown. Because he was Pogo. Fucking creepy. Much of PDM's workforce consisted of high school students and young men. Gacy would often proposition his workers for sex. Shocker. Who didn't see that coming? Or insist on sexual favors in return for acts such as lending his vehicles, financial assistance, or promotions. Gacy also claimed to own guns, once telling an employee, "Do you know how easy it would be to get one of my guns out and kill you? And how easy it would be to get rid of the body?" In 1973, Gacy and a teenage employee traveled to Florida to view a property Gacy had purchased. On the first night in Florida, Gacy raped the employee in the hotel room. After returning to Chicago, this employee drove to Gacy's house and beat him in his yard. Gacy told his wife he had been attacked for refusing to pay him for poor quality painting work. So someone fucked him up. Good.
Yeah, good. In May 1975, Gacy hired 15-year-old Anthony.
Come on, you're Italian.
Antonius.
Antonucci.
2 months later, he went to Antonucci's home, knowing the youth had injured his foot in an accident the previous day. The two drank a bottle of wine, then watched a heterosexual stage film before Gacy wrestled Antonucci to the floor and cuffed his hands behind his back.
Oh, shit.
One cuff was loose, and Antonucci freed his arm while Gacy was out of the room. When Gacy returned, Antonucci, a high school wrestler, pounced upon him. He wrestled Gacy to the floor, obtained possession of the handcuff key, and cuffed Gacy's hands behind his back. At first, Gacy threatened Antonucci, then calmed down and promised to leave if he would remove the handcuffs. Antonucci agreed, and Gacy left. Antonucci later recalled that Gacy told him, "Not only are you the only one who got out of the cuffs, you got them on me."
So, right there, A, the fact this kid didn't call the cops.
Right,
is
why
pissing
would
me
you
off.
not call the cops?
B, Gacy just admitted he's not the first one in cuffs.
Right.
Reason number
so
two.
to call the cops.
Jesus Christ, this story. On July 26, 1976, Gacy picked up 18-year-old David Cram as he hitchhiked on Elsom Avenue. Gacy offered him a job with PDM, and he began work the same evening. On August 21st, Cram moved into his house. Jesus. The next day, Cram and Gacy had several drinks to celebrate his 19th birthday. With Gacy dressed as Pogo, Gacy conned Cram into donning handcuffs. His wrist cuffed in front of his body rather than behind. He swung Cram around while holding the chain linking the cuffs, then said he intended to rape him. Cram kicked Gacy in the face and freed himself from the handcuffs. A month later, Gacy appeared at Cram's bedroom door intending... Wait, he stayed?
I don't know. I would have moved out and called the cops.
Jeez, what the fuck? Gacy appeared at Cram's bedroom door intending to rape him, saying, "Dave, you really don't know who I am. Maybe it would be a good idea if you give me what I want." Cram resisted, straddling Gacy, who left the bedroom, stating, "You ain't no fun." Cram moved out on October 5th and left PDM, although he did periodically work for Gacy over the following 2 years. Shortly after Cram moved out of Gacy's house, another employee, 18-year-old Michael Rossi, moved in. Rossi had worked for PDM since May of 76. He lived with Gacy until April 77. Rossi sometimes assisted Gacy in clowning at grand openings of business as Pogo and Rossi as Patches.
Gacy with First Lady Rosalind Carter on May 6, 1978, 6 years after his first murder and 7 months before his final arrest. Gacy also entered local Democrat Party politics, initially offering use of his employees to clean party headquarters at no charge. He was rewarded for his community service with an appointment to serve on the Norwood Park Township Street lighting community, earning the title of precinct captain. In 1975, Gacy was appointed director of Chicago's annual Police Construction Day Parade, an event would supervise until 1978. Though his work with the parade, Gacy met and was photographed with First Lady Rosalind Carter in May 6 of 1978. The event later became an embarrassment to the United States Secret Service. In the pictures, Gacy was wearing an S pin, indicating a person given special clearance.
So even the Secret Service fucked up. how does this guy falling through all these cracks? Like, was he born in a fucking three-leaf clover patch? I mean, what the hell? So now he's working on politics, the Democratic Party. He got to meet First Lady Carter. Now we're gonna climb into the murders. Ready for the murders?
I am ready for the murders. I feel bad for the families. Like, this is nuts.
Yes. John Wayne Gacy murdered at least 33 young men and boys and buried 26 of them in the crawl space of his house. His victims included people he knew.
It didn't smell.
I guess we gotta keep reading. His victims included people he knew and random individuals lured from Chicago's Greyhound bus station, Bughouse Square, or simply off the streets with the promise of a job with PDM. An offer of drink and or drugs or money for sex, some victims were grabbed by force, others conned into believing Gacy, who often carried a sheriff's badge, was actually a policeman. Gacy usually lured a lone victim to his house, although on more than one occasion, Gacy also had what he called doubles, 2 victims killed in the same evening.
Wow.
Inside Gacy's home, his usual modus operandi, or MO, was to ply a youth with drink, drugs, or generally gain his trust. He would then produce a pair of handcuffs to show a magic trick, sometimes as part of a clowning routine. He typically cuffed his own hands behind his back, then released himself with the key, which he had hidden between his fingers. He then offered to show his intended victim how to release himself from the handcuffs. Then, with his victim mangled into the handcuffs and unable to free himself, Gacy then made a statement to the fact that the trick is you have to have the key. So he was not only handcuffing him, he was fucking with him.
Having restrained his victim, Gacy proceeded to rape and torture his captive, and frequently began by sitting on or straddling himself above his victim's chest before forcing the victim
To blow him. Fillet.
Yes. Gacy then inflicted acts of torture, including burning with cigars, making his captive inmate a horse as he sat on their back and pulled upon makeshift reins around their necks. In violation with foreign objects such as dildos, prescription bottles, after he had sodomized his captive, to immobilize his captive legs before engaging in acts of torture. Gacy frequently
Cuffed their ankles.
he cuffed their ankles to a 2x4 with handcuffs attached to each end, an act inspired by Houston mass murderers. He is also known to have verbally taunt many of his victims throughout their continued abuse, and to have dragged or forced several victims to crawl into his bathroom, where he partially drowned them in the bathtub before repeatedly reviving them, enabling him to continue his prolonged assault.
So he would drown them to death and bring them back to life. Jesus. Wow. Gacy typically murdered his victims by placing a rope tourniquet around their neck before progressively tightening the rope with a hammer handle. He referred to this act as the rope trick, frequently informing his captive, "This is the last trick." In at least one instance, he had read part of Psalm 23 as he tightened the rope around his victim's neck. Occasionally, the victim had convulsed for an hour or two before dying, although several victims died by asphyxiation from cloth gags stuffed deep into their throat, except for the final 2 murderers, who were murdered between 3 a.m. and 6 a.m. After death, Gacy usually stored the victim's body under his bed for up to 24 hours before burying his victim in the crawl space, where he periodically poured quicklime to hasten the decomposition of his victims. So that's
So
how
the
he hid the
lime
smell.
broke it down.
Some victims' bodies were taken to his garage in a bomb prior to their burial. So this story is a crazy and long one.
Yes, it is.
I don't want this podcast to go over to like 4 hours, so we're gonna sum it up. Gacy murdered a lot of young kids this way. 33 victims, buried them basically all in his basement.
That's insane.
He also apparently had help from Rossi in a couple of the paragraphs, because Rossi ended up kind of turning him in. Gacy still denied it up until the police had been informed Gacy that they had indeed found human remains in his crawl space and that he would now face murder charges. Gacy told officers he wanted to clear the air, adding that he had known his arrest was inevitable since the previous evening, which he had spent laying on the couch of his lawyer's office confessing. In the early morning hours of December 22nd, and in the presence of his lawyers, Gacy provided a formal statement in which he confessed to murdering approximately 30 young males, all of whom he claimed had entered his house willingly. Some of the victims were referred to by name, but Gacy claimed to not know or remember most of the names. He claimed all were teenage male runaways or male prostitutes, the majority of whom he had buried in the crawl space. Gacy claimed to have only dug 5 of the victims' graves in this location and had his employees dig the remaining trenches so that he would have graves available. Jesus. Oh my God. It's insane. I can't believe it. Also, accompanied by police, his lawyers, and his older sister, I don't know why she's hanging around, Gacy was driven to the I-55 bridge on December 23rd to pinpoint the precise spot where he confessed to having thrown the body of Robert Peist and 4 other victims into the Des Plaines River. Gacy was then taken to his house and instructed to mark his garage floor with orange spray paint to show where he had buried the individual he supposedly killed in self-defense. Gacy's sketch of burial location in the basement helped assisted officers in their search for the victims buried beneath his house. During his confession, Gacy drew a rough diagram of the basement on a phone message sheet to indicate where their bodies were. 26 bodies were unearthed from Gacy's crawl space over the next week. 26 bodies.
And then he had 3 more
Elsewhere.
on his property.
Yep. Cook County Medical Examiner Robert Stein supervised the exhumations. Each victim unearthed from the crawl space was placed in a body bag, which was placed near the front door awaiting transport to the mortuary. Imagine being the neighbors.
Yeah, right?
Because this guy came off as this great guy helping out the community, and they're pulling 30 body bags out of his basement.
And they're just leaving them on the front lawn.
Oh my God, I can't believe it. Unbelievable. It's crazy. It's outstanding. The crawl space was marked in sections, and each body was given an identification number. The first body recovered from the crawl space was assigned a marker denoting the victim as Body 1. Gacy had buried this victim in the northeast section of the crawl space, directly beneath the room he used as his office. No cause of death could be determined. A lot of these, I mean, if you're not, it'd be kind of hard, because we're talking years later. Decomposition, they're under lime. I'm sure that breaks them down quicker. So a lot of these are, and they actually just confirmed one recently. Did you see that on the news? It was like 2 weeks ago. They found DNA, and they were able to give that family some break.
Like closure after all those years.
The body of John Bukovich was labeled as Body 2. On December 23rd, investigators returned to unearth 3 more corpses which had been buried in the same trench as body 1. Body 3 was buried in a crawl space directly above body 4, so he was stacking bodies down there. Body 5 was buried directly beneath body 1. The victim was buried 36 inches below the surface of the soil, so that's only 3 feet.
That's it, yes.
Wow. The search for victims was postponed temporarily over Christmas. 4 more bodies were unearthed on December 26. That's a great Christmas break. If you're the digging team, oh, I get to take a break. Merry Christmas. Then we find 4 more bodies. Body 7 was found in a fetal position. A cloth gag was found in his mouth, leading investigators to conclude the victim most likely died from asphyxiation. Body 8 was found with the tourniquet used around his neck still. Body 9 was found beneath a layer of concrete and was found to have several stab wounds to the ribs. So his MO was strangulation and hook, but he killed him other ways.
Yes.
On December 27th, 8 more bodies were discovered. Body 10 was buried face upwards, parallel to the wall of the crawl space directly beneath the entrance to Gacy's home. Both body 11 and 12 were found face down with ligature marks around their neck, so they were strangled like the rest of them. And both were buried beside each other in the center of the crawl space. Directly beneath the hallway, body 13 was found beneath the spare bedroom. Bodies 14 and 15 were recovered from a common grave diagonal to body 10. Both 14 and 15 were found with their head and upper torsos inside separate body bags.
So he
escalated.
Yes.
Body 16 was found close to body 13. The victim was found with a cloth rag lodged deep in his throat, causing him to die of suffocation. The 17th victim was found with a ligature mark around his neck. 26 bodies were found buried in Gacy's crawl space. The following day, 4 more bodies were exhumed. Body 19 was buried directly beneath Gacy's master bedroom, perpendicular to body 18, which was located beneath the spare bedroom, and found with a ligature mark around the neck. Body 20 was buried in the northwest corner of the crawl space, perpendicular to body 19. By December 29th, 6 more bodies were unearthed. Bodies 22, 23, 24, and 26 were buried in a common grave located beneath the kitchen and laundry room. Body 25 beneath Gacy's bathroom. Body 22 was found directly beneath Gacy's kitchen with a section of cloth-like material lodged in his throat, 2 socks recovered from the pelvic region. This victim was buried directly beneath another body. This is insane.
Then he found
They found bones from body 25.
23, 24, and 25.
Unbelievable. Operations were suspended due to the Chicago blizzard of 1979, but resumed in March despite Gacy's insistence that all the buried victims had been found. Well, on March 29th, body 28 on March 9th, body 28 was found wrapped with several plastic bags and buried beneath the patio approximately 15 feet from the barbecue pit in Gacy's backyard. So now he ran out of room in the crawl space, he's using the backyard. On March 16th, body 29 was found beneath the dining room floor. All the victims discovered at 8213 West Summerdale were in an advanced state of decomposition. Dental records and x-ray charts helped Stein identify the remains. 23 victims were identified via dental records, with 2 further victims identified via skeletal trauma. These identifications were also supported with personal artifacts found around Gacy's home. So he went from meticulous, careful, to just leaving shit all over the house. So you can see how his brain deteriorated over the years to just not giving a fuck anymore.
Right.
So I mean, it's a crazy story. Gacy was brought to trial on February 6, 1980, charged with 33 murders. He was tried in Cook County, Illinois, before Judge Louis Garipo. The jury was selected from Rockford because of the significant press coverage in Cook County. I mean,
I guess.
I don't care where you have to go. Everyone heard about this.
Yes.
Crazy. At the request of his defense counsel, Gacy spent over 300 hours with doctors at the Menard Correctional Center in Chester in the year before his trial. He underwent a variety of psychological tests before a panel of psychiatrists to determine whether he was mentally competent to stand trial. Gacy attempted to convince the doctors that he had multiple personality disorder. He claimed to have 4 personalities: the hard-working, civic-minded contractor, the clown, the active politician, and a police. How can you be a policeman in
Called Jack Henley.
called Jack Henley, whom he referred to as Bad Jack? When Gacy had confessed to police, he claimed to be relaying the crimes of Jack, who detested homosexuality and who viewed male prostitutes as weak, stupid, and degraded scum. So even a part of him hated that he was gay, and that's a big red flag too.
How do you be his lawyer? Yeah, I guess money talks.
His lawyer opted to have Gacy plead not guilty by reason of insanity to the charges against him. Presenting Gacy as a Jekyll and Hyde character, the defense produced several psychiatric experts who examined Gacy. 3 psychiatric experts at Gacy's trial testified that they found him to be a paranoid schizophrenic with multiple personalities. But they could have proved that at the start of this. 30 people didn't have to die.
Yes.
The prosecutor presented the case that Gacy was sane and in full control of his actions. So the prosecutors were saying, bullshit. To support this contention, they produced several witnesses to testify to the predetermination of Gacy's actions and the effort he took to escape detection. Those doctors refuted the defense doctors' claims of multiple personalities and insanity. Cram and Rossi testified that Gacy had made them dig drainage trenches and spread bags of lime in his crawl space. Both said Gacy looked periodically into the crawl space to ensure they and other employees were supervised and did not deviate from the precise locations he had marked. So he knew what he was doing because he doesn't want them to find the other bodies.
Correct.
It's insane.
On March 11th, final argument by both prosecution and defense attorneys began. They concluded the following day. Prosecuting attorney Terry Sullivan spoke first, outlining Gacy's history of abusing youth, the testimony of his efforts and avoid detection, and describing his surviving victims, Voorhees and Donnelly, a living dead, referring to Gacy as the worst of all murders. Sullivan stated, John Gacy has accounted for more human devastation than many earthly catastrophes, but one must tremble. I tremble when thinking about just how close he came to getting away with all of it.
Damn, that's true. Because, I mean, a lot of it, even the wife, both wives,
Yeah.
kept it hidden. In the sentencing phase of the trial, the jury deliberated for more than 2 hours before sentencing Gacy to death for each murder committed after the Illinois statute on capital punishment came into effect in June 1977. His execution was set for June 2nd, 1980. On being sentenced, Gacy was transferred to the Menard Correctional Center, where he remained incarcerated on death row for 14 years. They need to, like, I understand you don't want to kill them right away because new evidence can come up, but 14 years with 30 bodies in your basement?
How much more evidence do you need?
How much do the taxpayers have to spend to feed this guy who murdered 30 people? Before his trial, Gacy initiated contact with a journalist, Russ Ewing, to whom he granted numerous interviews between 1979 and 1981. Ewing later collaborated with the author Tim Cahill to publish the book Buried Dreams. Oh, that's a fucking bad title for that book. Later, the information Gacy divulged to Ewing would prove instrumental in establishing the identity of his first victim. Wow. On February 15, 1983, Henry Bisbon, a fellow death row inmate known as the I-57 Killer, stabbed Gacy in the upper arm with a sharpened wire as Gacy was participating in a voluntary work program. A second death row inmate injured in the attack, William Jones, received a superficial stab wound to the head. Both received treatment in the prison hospital for their wounds. After his incarceration, Gacy read numerous law books and filed so many motions and appeals. Although he did not prevail in any of them, his appeals related to the issues such as the validity of the search warrant granted to the Des Plaines police on December 13, 1978, and his objection to his lawyer's insanity plea defense at the trial. But you went with it, so guess what? You're stuck.
Yes.
Gacy also contended that although he had some knowledge of five of the murders, those of McCoy, Butkovich, Godsick, and Peast, the other 28 murders had been committed by employees. So he was just letting people murder people in the basement. Get the hell out of here. That's insane. After the U.S. Supreme Court denied Gacy's final appeal in October of 1993, the Illinois Supreme Court formally set an execution date for May 10th, 1994.
On the morning of May 9th, 1994, Gacy was transferred from Maynard Correctional Center to Stateville Correctional Center in Crest Hill to be executed. That afternoon, he was allowed a private picnic on the prison grounds with his family. Wait, what?
I'm okay with that. It's the last.
For his last meal, Gacy ordered a bucket of KFC, a dozen fried shrimp, French fries, fresh strawberries, and a Diet Coke. That evening, he observed prayer with a Catholic priest before being escorted to the Stateville execution chamber to receive a lethal injection. Before the before
execution.
Yes, the execution began. The chemicals used to effect the execution solidified, unexpectedly clogging the IV tube used to administer the chemicals into Gacy's arm, complicating the procedure. Blinds covering the windows through which witnesses observed the execution were drawn. The execution team replaced the clogged tube. After 10 minutes, the blinds were reopened and the execution resumed. The entire process took 18 minutes. Anesthesiologists blamed the problem on the prison officials' inexperience at conducting an execution, saying that they had correct execution procedures been followed, the complications would never have occurred. This error apparently led to Illinois adopting an alternative method of lethal injection. On this subject, one prosecutor at Gacy's trial, William Knuckle, said he got much easier death than any of his victims.
I'd say. According to published reports, Gacy was a diagnosed psychopath who did not express any remorse for his crimes. His final sentence statement to his lawyer before his execution was that killing him would not compensate for the loss of others, and that the state was murdering him. His final spoken words were reported to be, "Kiss my ass." In the hours leading up to Gacy's execution, a crowd estimated at over 1,000 gathered outside the correctional center. A vocal majority were in favor of the execution, although a number of anti-death penalty hippie nonsense bullshit people were in favor of him living. Like, how many do you have to kill for you to be like, all right, let's put this guy down? I'm at like 3.
Right.
3's more than an accident. Some of those in favor of the execution wore t-shirts harkening to Gacy's previous community services as a clown and bearing satirical slogans such as "No tears for this clown." The anti-death penalty protesters present observed a silent candlelight vigil. After Gacy's death was confirmed at 12:58 a.m. on May 10th, 1994, his brain was removed. It is in the possession of Helen Morrison, a witness for the defense at Gacy's trial who has interviewed Gacy and other serial killers in an attempt to isolate common personality traits of violent sociopath. His body was cremated. Well, they burned his body, kept his brain. Hopefully the brain went to helping all these red flags from being stopped, because this was a fuck ton of red flags and a lot of shit went through the cracks with this. How did he get out of prison the first time when the doctors said he had these problems?
Yeah, he was supposed to be in there for 14 years. He got out 18 months later.
Right, but even after the 14 years, he should at least had to have care or counseling after that.
Right.
But he got out in 18 months and just fucking killed 30 more people. We have a list of the names of the deceased we like to cover because, like I said, we do this for the families. I mean, yes, it's fascinating. It's all that, but you got to remember at the end of the day, these were people's kids. And that's why it's important to keep these stories moving, not to glorify serial killers, because this guy was a real big piece of shit. Timothy McCoy, John Butkovich, Daryl Sampson, Randall Reffett, Samuel Stapleton, Michael Bonine, William Carroll, James Hackinson, Rick Johnston, Kenneth Parker, Michael Marino, William Bundy, no relation, Francis Alexander, Gregory Godzik, John Sick, John Prestige, Matthew Bowman, Robert Gilroy Jr., John Mallory, Russell Nelson, Robert Lynch, Tommy Bowling, David Tosma, William Kindred, Timothy O'Rourke, Frank Landing, James Mazzara, Robert Peast. And then there's 5 unidentified victims. I mean, the ages range from, I think our youngest was 14, right there, Michael Marino.
To 21, I think.
21. So these kids were taken at the heart of their life. I mean, it's not acceptable. They were unable to have a life, and it's so sad. But they could have stopped them.
Yes, they could have.
There's a little more. Retired Chicago police officer Bill Dorsch stated he had reason to believe there may be more victims buried in the grounds of an apartment building located at 6100 of Miami Avenue in Chicago, a property where Gacy is known to have been the caretaker for several years before his 1978 arrest. In 1975, Dorsch, then a Chicago police officer, observed Gacy, whom he knew on a casual basis, holding a shovel in the hours of the morning. When Dorsch confronted him, Gacy said he was doing work that he was too busy to do during the day. Dorsch also said that several other residents of West Miami Avenue stated that he had seen Gacy digging trenches in the ground of the property in the mid-1970s. One of the residents also said that Gacy later placed plants in elongated trench he had dug. At the time these actions were observed, Gacy was still married to Carol Hoff. In March of 2012, Cook County Sheriff's officials submitted a request to excavate the grounds of this property. The Cook County State's Attorney denied the request, citing a lack of probable cause as the reason, including the results of a 1998 search of the property. However, the Sheriff's Office noted that in 1998, a radar survey suggested 14 areas of interest within the property grounds, yet only 2 of these 14 anomalies have been excavated. Of the 12 remaining anomalies, 4 were described as being staggeringly suggestive of human skeletons. So, in 98, why didn't you just dig? What the fuck is the problem here? This is when the government gets in the way. I understand probable cause, but the dude's dead. Find the victims.
Yes.
It's
I
not going to
agree.
put him away further. Moreover, Bill Dorsch had provided police with a letter from the radar company which confirmed the 1998 search of the grounds was incomplete. A second request to excavate the grounds of West Miami Avenue was submitted to the Cook County State Attorney by Sheriff Tom Dart in October of 2012. The request was finally granted in January of 2013, and a search of the property was conducted in the spring. Both FBI dogs and ground-penetrating radar equipment was used in the second search of West Miami Avenue. However, the search yielded no human remains. So, they still haven't dug.
No. They only use dogs.
And radar.
Yep.
Unbelievable. It's... Believe it or not, something good has come out of this. The Amber Alert. In 1984, Sam Amarante, one of Gacy's two defense attorneys at his 1980 trial, authored procedures that were incorporated by the Illinois General Assembly into the Missing Child Recovery Act of 1984. Amarante has since said that the primary inspiration for this legislation was that at the time of the Gacy murders, Illinois police had to wait 72 hours before initiating a search for a missing child or adolescent. 72 hours before you start looking?
Yeah, they're long gone by then.
Ugh. The Illinois Missing Child Recovery Act of 1984 removed the 72-hour waiting period. Other states across America subsequently adopted similar procedures. As a result, a national network aimed at locating missing children was gradually formed. This has since developed into the Child Abduction Emergency, also known as the Amber Alert. It's crazy. While Gacy was in his cell, we all saw that he likes to paint. And I'll throw some paintings up right now. Okay, we saw the paintings. He drew inspiration from a wide range of sources for his artwork, with his paintings depicting subjects as diverse as Christ, birds, skulls, his own home, and John Dillinger. That's a fucking random amount. Many paintings were of clowns, including himself as Pogo or Patches. His Hi Ho series features some scenes of Walt Disney's versions of The Seven Dwarfs. Although Gacy was permitted to earn money from the sale of his paintings until Why? Why does he need money? He's on death row. He claimed his artwork was intended to bring joy into people's lives. Now you're worried about joy in people's lives? Many of Gacy's paintings have been displayed at exhibitions. Others have been sold at various auctions with individual prices ranging from $200 to $20,000. If you're spending $20,000 on a painting Gacy drew, you need to get some help. Family members of his victims publicly burned 90% of his paintings. Good.
Wow.
I actually did see a painting. It was in the Museum of Death in Los Angeles. Kind of fucking creepy looking at that painting, knowing he drew it. It was right next to his costume, too.
Oh, that's weird.
Yeah.
That's very creepy.
And as you know, Peacock is running right now. They ran it, 3 months ago? Guess it came out. The John Wayne Gacy story on Peacock.
I think so.
Yeah, you have to be the next level up on their tier to watch it. We haven't saw it yet. I want to watch it, but it's just something you gotta really be in the mood for. And there's been some decent movies about John Wayne Gacy.
I think Lifetime made a movie.
They did. But they also made, there was one called To Catch a Killer with Brian Dennehy as Gacy, but it wasn't about the murders. It was about the cat and mouse chase between detective and Gacy. There was a feature film in 2003. Mark Holton, who you know from Back to the Future, depicts his life. And he was actually really good in that. That was a creepy-ass movie. I saw that years ago. But that wraps it up with John Wayne Gacy. I'm glad the fucker's in the ground.
Me too.
Those kids were really young. So, not only did he destroy their lives, like destroyed the family, destroyed their future, destroyed the family's future. But that's all I got on Gacy. What'd you think about Gacy?
He wasn't. There's no words for it. He was just an asshole, and a lot of it could have been stopped.
Yes, that's the biggest takeaway from this is how many red flags are we just going to let slip through? We're still letting red flags through. Take a look at Columbine. Take a look at the Aurora movie theater shooting. These are all missed opportunities that we could have had this taken care of. Look at any school shooting. I mean, this isn't happening because of gang violence or money. This is mental health. Fix it. It's not that fucking hard. I mean, that's my biggest fear every day when my kid goes to fucking school. What kid's gonna have a mental goddamn breakdown? But that's all we have for you for the start of our true crime podcast. A new section on HalloweenHaunts365.com. I think it went well.
We're only over an hour, so that's not too bad.
Yeah, if we went through every individual murder, this would have been 5 hours long, and no one's listening to a 5 hour long podcast. But watch the documentaries. I mean, there's a lot of interesting turns. I just can't believe how many red flags were missed. I mean, you had the guy in jail. You didn't have to murder anyone else.
Right.
Well, that's all we have for you today at HalloweenHaunts365.com, the podcast. We got some more stuff coming down the hopper. I haven't decided who our next true crime one's going to be. I kind of want to do Bundy. That's a crazy story of being a little too smart and psychotic. But that's all we have for you today. You got anything for the folks out there?
No, until next time.
Until next time. Thank you for stopping by. Make sure you hit the subscribe button. It's going to be right here. We have more of this coming. We have some haunt stuff coming up, some ghost stuff coming up. And that is all we have for you today at HalloweenHaunts365.com, the podcast, where every day is haunt season. Goodbye.
Bye.